In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to build an experimentation and e-commerce optimization program in 2025 for your online shop. This is a full-length conversion optimization course, and this is the exact process that we've used to increase conversions and revenue for over 50 e-commerce brands in Germany and Europe, like Ahead Nutrition, Rosenthal, Def Shop, PKWDE, and many others that you've probably heard of. And you know what? This isn't gonna be your basic test a few button colors and hope for the best CRO video that you see so plentiful on YouTube. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to build a strategic experimentation program so you can easily increase revenue, conversion rate, average order value, you name it, but most importantly, your bottom line profit. In this video, I will show you the exact step-by-step process you need to follow so you never have to watch another CRO video again. So let's get right into it and hop onto my screen. All right, so to start this course, we're first going to look at what this course is actually supposed to do, and then we'll just go straight ahead into it. By the end of this course, you will have a fundamental understanding, or a good understanding, of all the fundamental principles of conversion rate optimization. You will build a robust analytics infrastructure to support your CRO efforts. At least I'm going to show you what you need to do in order to do that. You will build and develop a strategic experimentation program that's actually aligned with your business activities and business objectives, instead of just being ad hoc and lacking guidance. You will be able to implement and analyze A/B tests effectively to drive continuous improvement, and you'll be able to structure and manage a dedicated CRO team and potentially collaborate with external partners. To give you a bit of an overview of this course, we have a few modules here. First is introduction, that's where we are at right now. And then we have all the strategic aspects of CRO. This includes strategy, business alignment, strategic opportunities, metric trees. Some of these things will sound a bit maybe familiar, some might not, but I'll show you all of that in the module 2. Module 3 is the prerequisites for success. This means primarily analytics infrastructure and key metrics to focus on. Then we'll get into actually doing stuff. This will be research, user behavior, heat mapping, session recordings, feedback. Then we'll go into implementation. This means what kind of infrastructure will we need in terms of tool selection, how we will set it up properly. Then we will go into program strategy, process development, test planning, all of that jazz. And then module 7 is implementation and quality assurance. Some best practices, pitfalls, and then almost the last one, or one of the last ones at least, is module number 8, which will be analysis, looking at results, how to gain insights, and how to take it to the next level by implementing next steps and learnings. And then module number 8 is team structure. So if you want to take CRO and experimentation seriously, at some point you will have to build a team that might be in-house, that might use agencies, that might use consultants. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure you have the right skills in your company. This is what we'll look at in module number 9, team structure. Module number 10 is literally just the conclusion. We'll sum up all the things we've learned and what the next steps might be for you, how we potentially can work together, and yeah. But up until that point, we will now just get started, because I've been talking for quite a few minutes already and I want to get going. Although, before we get going, why am I even allowed to talk about all this? I have now over 6 years experience running a consultancy and agency in conversion rate optimization and experimentation. I've consulted with more than 50 brands, including industry leaders like Ahead Nutrition, Jack's Beauty Line, Rosenthal Organics, PKWDE, Surplus, OneMate, Def Shop. There are so many more. I could put a bunch of logos in here, but you can just check out some of them on our website, 3tech.de. I think there's a link somewhere in the description. But basically, to sum it up in a few words, 3tech, that's my company, helps e-commerce businesses in improving decision-making, reducing risk, and amplifying growth through strategic experimentation. This leads to more revenue, lowered customer acquisition costs, and an overall higher ROI on marketing spend. But now, my goal with this course is to share the exact processes and methodologies we've developed so you can achieve similar success on your own in your online shop, or of course with help from outside. But I am a strict believer in knowing your craft and knowing what you're dealing with. So even if later down the road you decide to work with someone external, it is good to be able to judge if what they're doing is actually valid. So this is the course for you. Either you want to do it on your own and achieve amazing success, or you just want to understand the process, how things are going, how things flow. In any case, I hope you have fun. This was my little plug in the beginning, but let's get right into it. If we look back at what came after introduction, it's the strategic aspects of CRO. Why is that relevant? If we don't have strategy, we're basically just dabbling in the wild and don't know what we're doing. So before we go into the real tactical things and the kind of tests you can set up, etc., and how you can do all that, statistics, blah, 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 we're going to look at strategy. So I'm going to read some of this because it's quite a lot, but bear with me. Conversion rate optimization isn't just about making small changes to your website. It's about strategic experimentation that aligns with your overall business goals. Strategic experimentation means systematically testing hypotheses that are directly tied to your key business objectives, ensuring that every test you run contributes to meaningful growth. And I'm going to take one thing, I'm just going to say one thing to that. Not every test that you run that contributes meaningful growth necessarily needs to be a winner. I'll explain, I think, later why that is, but I'll take that as a side info to have that in the back of your mind, because that's crucial to understand. We're here to learn. We're here to compound and stack all the value that we gain from each individual test and just make sure that we learn along the way. And sometimes tests will be winning, sometimes they will be losing, but eventually we'll just treat most of them as learnings in order to stack up and build knowledge about our customers, their behavior, what they need, and go from there. All right, then alignment with business strategy and objectives. To maximize the impact of your CRO efforts, it's crucial that your experimentation aligns with your broader business strategy. Whether your goal is to increase revenue, enhance user experience, or expand your customer base, your CRO initiatives should support these objectives. For example, if your main goal is increasing revenue, for example, then focus on experiments that optimize your sales funnel, reduces cart abandonment, and increase average order value. Of course, there is more you can do, but just to give you an idea, there's probably not much sense in just optimizing colors. You want actually people to go and purchase something, right? So there is one big concept. For some, it might be new. For some from other maybe areas, it might be something they know, but it's called strategic opportunities in CRO and experimentation. Strategic opportunities in CRO arise when you identify customer problems. We've talked about that. When solved, can significantly impact your business metric. So what you need to do is start by linking pain points with key business metrics. For instance, if customers are frequently abandoning their carts, addressing this issue can directly improve your conversion rate and revenue. Doesn't necessarily have to, but we'll look at that later. Actually filmed a video about strategic opportunities and experimentation strategy. So if you want to go more into this topic, then you'll be able to learn more. I can quickly open it for you so you know which one it is. If you're running a beta, so it's basically a 30-minute video that goes. It's part of I filmed basically a workshop that I give with or that I do with folks, and it goes on and on about how you can create a problem statement and how you can turn these problem statements as part of that framework that I'm going to show here, strategic opportunity, how you can put all of that together, like company strategy, customer problem, key outcome metric, and overarching hypothesis. You can put all of that together and build a proper strategic opportunity. And lay the ground for an experimentation strategy. Once you have done that and you prioritize, you've created like 3, 4, 5 strategic opportunities, you'll need to prioritize them somehow. Because one of the big things is if you're working on the wrong problem, and with that maybe the wrong strategic opportunity, you might not be doing what is driving the most growth at this point. So once you identified these potential strategic opportunities, use the ICE framework, that's impact, confidence, ease, to score and evaluate them and understand which one to tackle first, or maybe a bunch of them which you can tackle at the same time, maybe in different product teams, etc. But what you want to do is you want to focus on high impact, high confidence, and easy to implement changes. Although the aspect of easy to implement might not be so obvious at the point you're just looking at these opportunities, because you're not thinking in solutions just yet. So maybe scratch that, but just look at high confidence and high impact. You basically look at the problems first and later get into the solutions. That's when you actually use the ease factor as well. All right. Creating an experimentation strategy. That's actually what we want to do right now. Developing a cohesive experimentation strategy involves using your prioritized opportunities, that's what we just did, to guide your testing efforts. Ensure that each test you run is part of a larger plan that supports your overall CRO program. This strategic approach helps in maintaining focus, avoiding random ad hoc tests, also a concept of ad hoc tests that I describe in the video. Actually, we can quickly go here. Ad hoc testing versus strategic experimentation. Here you can see exactly what the differences are. Ad hoc testing is more reactive. You might just focus on what your competitors are doing. Ideas are generated in a silo. When you look at results, you just look at was it a winner or a loser, instead of going more deeper into the results and segmenting and trying to finding actual insights about your user behavior to then inform future tests. But yeah, watch that video. It's crucial for making sure you actually get the most out of testing strategically. So one of the prerequisites, though, that I didn't cover in that video, and I will probably make a more in-depth video on metric trees, goal tree maps at a later point, but is metric trees. We've developed this metric tree canvas that's inspired by goal tree maps from other people in the industry. But basically, a metric tree is a visual tool that helps you map out how various metrics are interconnected and how they contribute to your overall arching business objectives. It provides a clear framework for understanding which metrics to focus on and how improving them can lead to your desired outcomes. There's just a few steps involved, and we'll go into a FigJam file. You can do it on paper or in Miro or another tool. We do it in FigJam in just a minute, but there's just a few steps. Basically, you just start with your primary business objectives. This is typically something like, we want to increase revenue, but make it as specific as possible. So maybe you have your business goal that you set for now 2025, and you want to increase revenue by 25%. Maybe your top line revenue goal is, I think in this example here, it was 75 million. I anonymized it, I hope, from the customer, but it was, I think, 75 million annualized revenue. That was their goal for the year, I think 2023 or 2024. Yeah, you'll just take that top line goal, could be something else, and you basically use that, and then we'll break it down. Below that, we will try to identify key metrics that directly impact these objectives. For example, conversion rate, average order value. Depending on your business, you might have things like retention rate, stuff like that, right? You want to have these things in there. You want to have these key metrics. And then, because we're talking about a tree and all the branches, we'll try to break down each and every metric into sub-metrics and supporting metrics that influence it. For example, conversion rate could be influenced by add to cart rate and the checkout completion rate, etc. Right? There's multiple steps. There's For e-commerce, it's pretty simple, and you can use the example we have in this sheet. For other business models, you might have to adapt it a little bit, for example, for lead generation, etc. Then there is one optional step, but one that I highly recommend, and because we're building an experimentation program here, we also want to look at whether or not our experimentation program is effective. Is it successful? Right? We want to understand the metrics that we measure success by. So we will look at the number of experiments, the experiment velocity, win rate, number of learnings, all these kind of things. And we will also write them down while they are somewhat disconnected from the overall metrics that we have in the company or from the goals. This is something to start out with. The further you go with your experimentation program, right, at the point where experimentation is something you do naturally, you want to also include this as a different, like as a metric part of the tree. For now, we're just going to track it and to understand if the program by itself is successful. There's also a few resources, but actually let's just go into it. This might take a second to load. And we also have some key metrics over here that we'll look at later as part of this course. But basically, as you can see, we have a company goal, the one I mentioned, I think here, 75 million net revenue. We will break that down into, we have this part that we don't focus on as part of experimentation with this client. So it's not fully, or it's more or less grayed out, but it's still part of the tree. But then we have transactions and orders, effectively conversion rate, and our average revenue per user, which combines basically as conversion rate and AOV. And then we have all our tactical metrics beneath it that basically influence the transactions and the ARPU. And yeah, then we go even further. We look at the engagement metrics like how searches and review engagement, scroll depth, product image views, and there is so much more. How these things actually influence bottom up our company goal. And then at the bottom here, we have a few metrics. You can go more in depth with these. With this client, that was, I think, all that they used, which is test velocity. So basically the number of tests that they were running per month, number of winning tests, number of learnings, but you can also include something like a stat-sig rate. So basically the amount of tests that were statistically significant. You can include things like, and I know some companies doing it, not looking at win rates, which is still something you can use here, but also something like how many tests were finished end to end. Super interesting metric. If you want to learn more about test trees, there is a great blueprint by CRO that goes into more detail. Then there is also an article by Optimizely that I can show, building a goal tree map to improve metrics that matter with your optimization program. Fairly in depth. You can go and check that out. We're going to close this now and go to the next step. But really make sure to do this once for your company. Takes 20-30 minutes to do it once. And once you have it, you can move on and use this as a regular reference. Actually, we will need it when we look at metrics further in the course. But for now, we're going to continue with what I call the prerequisites for success in CRO, or for a successful conversion rate optimization program. First, without data, none of this actually matters. A robust analytics infrastructure is the foundation of any successful program. And if you don't like numbers, I'm sorry to break it to you, but we will have to look at data. We will have to go into analytics. We have to we will have to crunch numbers and look at it to gain insights. If you're not the person to do it, maybe get some help from either an external partner who can help with that, or someone in the company who loves data, who loves to go deep with it, someone who loves tracking, because we can only look at data if we have a proper setup. In this one, we will look at GA4. We actually won't be able to go too in depth with in this video in how to set everything up, because I know not every company has a Shopify, not every company has a shopware, or not every company has the same setup. Some use just different ways of tracking, but I will refer you to a really comprehensive guide, e-commerce setup. It's
sending e-commerce information into Google.
But it's 12 minutes long. This will show you the basics, but if you check out Measure School generally, they have a lot more videos. For example, also this one here, that's by Loves Data, but still, that shows you how to properly set things up technically. What we still will look at is the kind of metrics you want to track in order to be able to go further and have the proper data in your platform. For Shopify, what I always, as a base layer, what I suggest is tracking collection views. Sometimes you can just use the basic integration with GA4, but generally I advise having at least these collection views, product views, add to cart actions. This could be, for example, on your PDP, click on the add to cart, but this could also be somewhere else on your collection page when people add products to the cart. Checkout initiations, this is basically the begin checkout event or checkout started event, I think it's called, and then purchases or checkout completed events. With all of these things, additionally, what I always recommend is looking at what other metrics will help you make good decisions or actually learn more about user behavior. So this might be things like discount code usage. Sometimes I'm surprised how little people know about how discount codes are actually used, if they actually lead to more purchases, stuff like that. Then product variation selections, understand maybe also more about how people go about putting one product variation into the cart and then switching it out for another because the size was wrong, etc. Right, there's so many things you can track here. Also things like user signups, if you have loyalty programs, etc. There's so many things you can track. Just also think about when you have this canvas, right, that we have here, think about what events actually occur, like what actions do users take, like how do people engage with your site, with your product, and think about what of that can you track and make sense to track in order to learn more about their behavior. In Shopify, some of these events can easily be triggered via customer events. For example, product views and add to cart actions and checkout initiations, blah, blah, blah. You can learn more about customer events here. This is not only relevant for analytics, but also later when we look at installing a testing tool, especially in Shopify, you now need to do this, especially if you want to track transactions, which if you're an e-com, you will, you need to be looking at. And yeah, so this is basically some guidance on how to dig deeper into customer events and pixels. But there's also, took me a while to find this, but this is also all the standard events that Shopify supplies, right? Here you have a checkout completed event, checkout started, you have a page viewed, but actually what you'll likely need is a cart viewed event. If that correlates with the cart you actually use. If you use a standard Shopify cart, you can use that. If you use a custom one, you will need a different one. But then you also have here the product viewed, and you'll have the collection viewed event. Like some of them I mentioned earlier. Product added to cart, also one. And here you can use either the app pixel configuration or just a custom pixel one that you can basically paste into your, with some adaptations into your custom pixel. But you'll have to really look at one is, if you're using Shopify, only then this matters. If you're using a different shop system or shop software, then you need to obviously find a way to track these events that are relevant for you. And also on another note, some other things you might just wanted to trigger using Google Tag Manager. For that, also I think there is some guidance in this video, but just search on YouTube how to use Tag Manager properly, or talk with the person that's setting up all your tracking for your shop. Ideally, you have someone who does that. if you remember, we have already looked at, let me quickly open it again. We have looked at this file here, and we were looking at this key metrics. I think it's here as well if you want to read it in a bit higher resolution, but I think we can also read it here. Typically for e-com setups, especially in the beginning stages, what companies mostly focus on is conversion rate, which is pretty much just the number of conversions by the number of visitors. That makes up the conversion rate. One hint though, if you look at Shopify, I'm not sure how it is at this exact moment, but it should. It's typically based on visits and sometimes not on visitors, depending also on where you look. And depending on the tool you use, make sure you're always comparing the same numbers and ideally from the same source. Because sometimes there is a difference between visits, which aligns with sessions, and visitors, which aligns with users. And if you calculate different metrics based on different other metrics like visitor versus visits, then you'll have inconsistent data, and that doesn't make sense. So just make sure you stay consistent here. Then second metric that we will always look at is our average order value, which is basically just the total order revenue divided by the number of orders. So if we have 2 orders, one 50 euros, 100 euros, the total order revenue is 150 euros. So we have an average order value in this case of 75 euros. Then hint, Shopify, I think this is a correct way, but some platforms don't. They also include or take into account cancellations and returns. This is something that in the default setup in GA4, or if you look at e-commerce metrics, you might not have there. So make sure you also look at the right data here. If you want to take cancellations and returns into account, if this is a big problem for you, then just make sure this is properly set up and taken into account. Then the last one, and probably the most complex one of these, is average revenue per user. And again, look at visitors versus visits here, but basically it's the total order revenue divided by the number of visitors. So we take the total order revenue here, and then the number divided by the number of visitors, and we get the average revenue per user. So if you look at it though, we have number of orders, which is typically number of conversions, and we have the total order revenue, which basically, if you think about it, is conversion rate times AOV. This is the same as total order revenue divided by number of visitors. Whichever way you use, again, make sure to use the same visitor metric as I just explained in lengthy detail. That's all for metrics now. We will look at what primary, secondary, and guardrail metrics are later and why they're relevant. But since we're talking about prerequisites, I'm actually having trouble with that word, for building a successful CRO program, let's get into some of the foundations here. Because how do we know, what sense does it make to run some tests on your website if there is just no research done? If you have no idea what the problems are, and we've talked about customer problems before, but there is typically disparity between, or like a difference between what you think customer problems are and what the customer's actual problems are. So we need to dig deep and do some research. What I always recommend doing is 2 things. We want to do quantitative analysis, right? We want to go into the funnel. And again, there is also videos on how to do that. I can't go into detail without also revealing too much client data here. But you want to build up a funnel, for example, in GA4, and understand where people are dropping off. I think there is a default funnel also available. If not, you can just build it in the report tool. Then once we have that data, and of course you can do way more than that, but we also want to look at something like Microsoft Clarity. Both are free, by the way, Google Analytics and Microsoft Clarity. Analytics up until a certain point, but for most of you this will be enough. Microsoft Clarity is basically a tool similar to what Hotjar offers, but completely free. Bear in mind their GDPR guidelines and rules. But basically, you can connect GA4 with Microsoft Clarity, and you can do all the things like heat maps. You can look click maps. You can look at session recordings. You can, even later when we look at implementing an A/B testing tool, you can look at how did people behave differently between your variations, between control and variation, and you can thereby gain a lot of insight into how people actually behave. Generally, with research, there are a few key activities that I always like to focus on. One is user behavior analysis, right? Again, utilize, what a weird word. Use tools like Google Analytics, Hotjar, and here instead of Crazy Egg, what I really like nowadays is Clarity, Microsoft Clarity, right? To monitor how people behave and navigate through the site, which pages they visit, and where they drop off. Heat mapping, session recordings, all these things are already part of Clarity, so you don't need to buy separate tools for that. For customer feedback, that totally depends on your current stack. You can just send out emails asking for customers' feedback, and I'll go into some questions and how you can do that in just a minute. But there's also software. Hotjar offers a nice tool. There is one new tool, I think it's called Decify or something. But basically, try to find a way how you can embed a form on your site asking people questions. Even post-purchase, there's different options. So after the purchase is done, you can ask questions, and I'll go into a bit more detail in just a minute. And then one of the things that some people, for some reason nowadays, always frown upon is competitor analysis. You know that you're not alone in the market, and there is this analogy that the swimmer who looks to the side is always slower than the one who just focuses on their goal. Nevertheless, I think making sure that you have your competitors in mind, and especially in order to identify industry standards, but also identify opportunities for how you can differentiate yourself, if that aligns with problems you're already solving for customers, I think is super important. What you shouldn't do necessarily is only do competitor analysis and look at your competitors and copy them. This obviously is stupid, but yeah, just I think with a little bit of grain of salt and just being smart about it, look at your competitors and find out what they're doing, and then understand if this is something that might make sense for you, and then of course test it, right? And we'll get into that later. The purpose of all of this is just to identify key issues, some that are on your site, some that are in the market, and find and identify opportunities for optimization. What this also helps you do is gain a deeper understanding of your users' needs and behaviors, and inform the generation, and what we'll get into later, of ideas and hypotheses for testing. Some best practices that I always like to give, even though best practices is apparently something bad, but best practices for the process is to not only focus only on qualitative or quantitative research methods, but use a combination of both, and definitely make sure here that data is accurate, reliable. This means really making sure, and I can just point it out once again, that your tracking setup is properly done. If you spend more time on that initially, just making sure that the data coming in is proper and reliable, then that's okay. Then the last one, regularly update your research finding. There is nothing worse than doing a big audit or something, and later and then just dumping it in the drawer and never looking at it, and not updating the findings and learnings and insights with new insights and findings that are coming in your day-to-day work. So really make sure, and we'll look at how to document that in just a bit, or some ways you can document it at least. Make sure to keep these things present and active. Now, I promised a note on voice of customer research. Collecting customer feedback through surveys, feedback forms, and reviews. Very important, reviews, because that's something people do voluntarily, offers direct insights into user experiences and expectations. You can use this kind of feedback to inform your CRO strategies and prioritize changes that address real customer needs. There's a reason why this is called voice of customer research, because it's the people talking to you. Typically, if you don't call them, there is no way to get feedback from them. So either you not bombard, but ask them for feedback through forums, on page, off page, in surveys you send out, or you just take what they send you voluntarily, which is reviews, say on Amazon. If you have an Amazon store, use that data. If you have Google reviews, if you have product reviews on your site using Okendo or reviews.io, etc., use this data to inform your customer problems. This is what customers are telling you. If they hate your products, they will tell you. If they love your products, they will tell you. But also use it with a grain of salt which is something you shouldn't do, but if you're filtering comments and only see, oh, how amazing these products are, use the raw reviews. Use and try to understand the language your customers are using. That's that. I could do a whole video just on doing voice of customer research, but to also just focus on the essentials here, what will drive the most impact for you right now. Here are a few questions that you might ask. On page, something you can do, and maybe not the first question, you should not ask this in the first 10 seconds of someone visiting your page, but what you can do is ask a question like, what's preventing you from completing your purchase today? You can phrase this in a different way, but essentially you want to understand what is keeping them from making their decision today. And maybe they'll tell you something like price. This will come up 100%, I can guarantee this. But basically, price is always going to be an issue. Aside from that, maybe it's something like, oh, my size is never available. If this comes up all the time, maybe you should talk with your sourcing or your buying department. If something's coming up like, hey, I can't find the right size, and you're actually offering kids socks, for example, or kids shoes, then maybe could be an insight that you can link things between products, right? There are so many insights you could gain from that. Basically, you want to ask it as an open-ended question and not give like 3-4 answers. This is not the idea. You want to get what their problem is, apart from just it's too expensive. Then questions you can ask, and you can use hundreds of questions here, but one that sometimes is helpful just to give like a gauge of how easy was it for people to use the site. Was it easy for people to find what they're looking for? You can, for example, trigger that after somebody added something to the cart, or even later in the process after they purchased, on a Likert scale 1 to 5. Was it easy, hard, or just impossible? Then post-purchase, something that is incredibly helpful. So people, and this is something that can't really damage their decision anymore, but like make them think about what almost made them not purchase, because they already purchased. So this is somebody who might have gone through the struggle of being convinced of actually buying it, or maybe having to talk with their partner. Maybe they were like, yeah, but I'm getting so much feedback on this and that problem I'm having, so I was looking for the right solution, this and that, right? So you want to find out like what was keeping them, because most of the things that happen in here in their heads, and if you don't ask, you have no way of understanding what it could have been. So with all of that, be creative with the kind of questions you ask, and go back to your customer problems that you defined earlier in your initial research. If this is your initial research, this should definitely influence the kind of customer problems and set of problem statements. Go back to the video I showed you that you're creating, and maybe you'll find new customer problems. If you don't find any, maybe start at a different step, start in the quantitative analysis, and then go deeper, and then ask the questions, maybe at the point where people are struggling, right? Be a bit creative with this and try to find cool ways of getting to these insights. Still, we are at prerequisites for success. And earlier we talked about data architecture, we talked about tracking setup. Now we talked about actually doing the research with the data we already have. But now in order to later test, we also need testing infrastructure. And this could be a whole course in of itself. I don't know your exact setup, so I'm going to give you some pointers hopefully the right direction, that will allow you to build a well-structured A/B testing infrastructure and ensures that your efforts are efficient and effective. Basically, with a proper setup, you will try to avoid as many technical issues as possible and ensure accurate data collection, just like with your tracking. And of course, this will also help you with just running better experiments, etc. There are a number of tools. This is not a complete list, but some that I like using, some that I think of very highly: ABLift, Convert, Chameleon, Optimizely, Growthbook, Eppo. They are different tools for different use cases, right? Also for different budgets. An ABLift and a Convert are typically less expensive than a Chameleon and Optimizely. A Growthbook and an Eppo require you to have a data warehouse. So if you don't have a data warehouse, these typically won't help you. But there's a lot of tools, and there's probably many that I've missed here. But here are some ideas of our evaluation process. We have a whole process of how to do that step by step. But this would just, we would sit here at midnight if we were to go through that. So there's just some things that we want to look at. One, server-side versus client-side versus hybrid testing. Typically what people start out with is client-side testing. And I'm going to actually highlight this here because this is what people start out with. If you're doing, if you have a default Shopify shop, a Shopify store, this is what you're likely going to do. Client-side testing basically means you have your shop and you're going to inject some JavaScript on the page. That's a technical thing. So you'll inject a script. That script makes changes to your website and sends tracking signals to, for example, your A/B testing software or GA4 or whatever. Server-side testing basically means that the server that's already sending the content has already made the decision whether to show you the control or variation of your experiment. So this decision is just being made at a different point. So what's the difference? Well, it's typically more performant. Typically doesn't work with Shopify because Shopify already serves content to you and you'll have to later manipulate it. There's also ways to do it, but can't get into specifics here. It also allows for different kinds of experiments, right? If you have, for example, a whole checkout that you want to test and you want to test different payment methods, there is ways to do that with client-side testing. Unfortunately, not anymore in the checkout, or at least at this point or at this stage with Shopify, even not with Shopify Plus in 2024, 2025. But with other setups, you might be able to run server-side experiments in the cart, in the checkout, and client-side experiments on other things. Hybrid testing is very similar to server-side testing, where, for example, if you have a client-side application, for example, a headless shop, even if it's based on Shopify, but you do all the implementation around what pages to show and how to show them, etc., and all the interactions yourself, you might be able to run experiments in your code base and then just send the signals to the testing tool via the client side. ABLift, for example, here, and also others offer something called like a force variation function, where you basically just look in the cookie or the other place you store the information, what variation someone is in, and send that information, or make that decision and send that information all the tracking signals to the platform. In any way, most of you will look at client-side testing. One, it's easier to implement. Typically, it's just a script that you put in the site, and we'll look at that in just a minute, I hope. If not, each vendor has a different... Actually, we don't have it in this course here because it's different for each vendor. We have courses for specific platforms as well, and there we show how to do it specifically. But yeah, client-side testing, it's typically very easy to implement, still reliable, but you just need to make sure that maybe you have a good CDN that's hosting the snippet. Most vendors, honestly, though, nowadays have really good coverage for that. All right, scalability make sure to choose a tool, and I just mentioned this, that can handle a lot of traffic. Most nowadays have zero issue with that, but just make sure to talk with the vendor beforehand if you're expecting huge traffic, that they're actually able to cover you there. Then make sure it integrates well with your existing tech stack. I just mentioned things like some things might not work with Shopify just because of platform constraints. Make sure they integrate well with your analytics tools. Make sure they're flexible. One thing that is often overlooked is support and community. And as a partner of quite a few vendors, we have seen over time that there is just questions that come up every single day regarding the platforms used, and sometimes being able to just hop into a Slack community, ask questions about the tool, about how to analyze an experiment, whatever. This can be really helpful. If the vendor offers that, that's a real big plus. Or if you have a way of contacting their support either 24/7 or at least within business hours, or if you have a partner that is specialized in working with that vendor, then that's also a big plus and typically also helps you get better results. Now I need a quick sip of water before we get into pricing. Honestly, just be very sure, or be very open also with vendors upfront what kind of budget you have. If you only have a budget of 5,000 euros a year, probably going for Optimizely or Chameleon won't be possible for you. If you have a budget less than that and you have also less traffic, maybe typically pricing depends on things like traffic users, signals sent or events sent, depending also on the vendor. Just be very open and honest about this. Also look at how many experiments do you want to run, how much exposure do you need for the tool. Typically, if it's measured by traffic, maybe you only need it on one domain and not all the other country domains because they don't have enough traffic anyway. There's ways to save money there. If you have questions regarding specific vendors, or if you want to have our help deciding on the right platform, because I know this is a complex process, please reach out, write a quick message, and we will be able to help you either throughout the project or through a one-off consultation. Then also feature sets. Well, now this is a big one, and I could also talk about this for hours probably, but if you're starting out, you probably don't need most of the advanced features that most of the tools are trying to sell you on. Literally, you need a good tool that does the basics right, does the statistics right, and that is able to connect with other tools like analytics and your maybe Microsoft Clarity. That's it. You don't typically need all the advanced statistic features, especially not if you're just starting out or if your requirements for A/B testing are very easy. So if you're being sold on these advanced features, targeting options is one thing that's obviously very important, but things like multivariate testing, etc., typically not the most important thing for you in the beginning. All right, again, if you need help here, just reach out and we'll be able to help you. Program strategy, and we're still in the prerequisites, I think, or actually we're now in, program strategy is a new module, I'm sorry. And we can actually quickly look at where we are at now. We are almost just about halfway through program strategy, so we'll look at process development and test planning. And I hope. Yeah, okay, I'm still recording. This just is now 1 hour and 4 minutes. Oh my God, we're going fast through this. So we are now looking at program strategy. Let me actually quickly check that we're also still here recording. And yes, we are. 70 gigabytes. That's amazing. All right. So program strategy. A structured approach to CRO involves several stages: research, ideas, hypotheses, tests, analysis, and learnings. And of course, this can be way more complex, and I'll show you that in a minute, but let's go through these steps step by step. You need to make sure that you gather and analyze data on user behavior and website performance to identify opportunities for optimization. Remember, we looked at that before. Then we need to brainstorm ideas for potential solutions, improvements based on the insights that were derived in the research phase. Also makes sense, right? But then we need to look at hypotheses, something we'll look into later. Testable statements that predict the impact of specific changes on key metrics. Then we need to execute experiments such as A/B tests to validate or refute the formulated hypothesis, right? This is a proper process, so we need to also go through all of that and not just implement the ideas that we've come up with. Then analysis, evaluate the results of the test to determine their effectiveness and gather actionable insights. Also makes sense. Learnings, of course, once we have the analysis, once we have the results, and maybe new insights, we want to form that into learnings to refine our strategies and inform future optimization efforts, come up with new ideas, etc. This is a circle. While it's probably not the most obvious with the arrows here, but there is arrows in here. So this is a process. This is cyclical. And if you want to have a look at this more complex, maybe more complete process diagram, check out this. The main process is basically here, but there's all the steps around it, right? Some ideas, we don't have the traffic. We won't be able to have the traffic for them, and we just put them into the IT backlog, prioritize it, and then get stuff fixed. If somebody can't add something to the cart, maybe you don't need to test that kind of change, right? Ideas, prioritization, then there's the whole hypothesis and legal approval if you have that, design, development, quality assurance, testing. And here, pretest analysis, monitoring, analysis, learnings, creating the results, reporting decisions, gaining new insights, and doing research. This can be very complex, but with this process, just try to keep it simple. And yeah, that's basically, don't need to make it more complicated than it is, except if you want to, then look at this diagram, but you can also go even further with responsibilities and who does what, etc. But that would be beside the point here, because I'm trying to teach you the main concepts here, so you can build something that matches your requirements. Documentation. I've talked about this before, because what does all of this matter if we don't learn, if we don't document our processes and tests? But especially our experiments, their results, hypotheses, and learnings. And that's what typically people use Airtable, Google Sheets, and Notion for. And we recommend at least documenting your hypotheses, a hypothesis per experiment, your ideas, page, audience, runtime, and metadata like when did the test start and end, and the results. Of course, it kind of depends on what metrics you use, and actually we should also use here metrics. We'll go into that in a minute. A quick plug, we are also building a software for that called Conversion Lab. We'll release it hopefully in sometime in January or February, and it will basically help you do all of that documentation, make it super easy, streamline your processes from test planning, execution, analysis, reporting, directly integrate with the tools you are probably using. Maybe one of those, where is it? Oops, we already scrolled over it. Maybe AB Lift, Convert, Chameleon, Optimizely, Growthbook, Apo, although these two have something similar embedded already. But for other tools like the others mentioned and some others that we're integrating, we are able to just pull the data from the platforms, have it all in one place, and even if you switch vendors, you still have all your data, or at least the aggregate data for the experiments available in your Conversion Lab repository. If you want to check it out, sign up for Conversion Lab here, just put your email address in, you can look at what we're doing in a bit more detail on this landing page. But yeah, basically we'll notify you when we're live, and maybe with a few steps in between, and get you interested in the platform, and maybe get you as a better tester. Hypothesis creation. Now we get into test planning, right? If we look at here, we have talked about research ideas. Now we will look into hypotheses. Hypothesis creation. This is also could be a whole video on its own. What I love to guide people towards, or just send people towards, is this hypothesis kit by the great Craig Sullivan. I think this last version is from May 2021. Maybe there's a newer one, but basically it will help you understand how to create a hypothesis based on research and data, describing the change, for whom that change will be, what the expected impact will be, assuming this hypothesis plays out. And there's a whole article that I do recommend you reading. We won't be able to go into every single aspect of it, because also it depends on what kind of problems you will be solving for. Here's examples from booking.com that I love to just show. If you're in e-commerce, of course, there is no point in just copy and pasting this exact hypothesis. But what you want to do is you want to take your own problems, your metrics, the kind of things you're working on, and change it so it fits your specific scenario. I think the most important thing for you is to actually read that article, do your own research, and then create the hypothesis using this template. It's pretty simple, but it's something I do recommend you do, and document, because if you don't document it, you will forget it, and you will try to make the experiment look nicer than it might actually be. Once you have the hypothesis done, either in something like Conversion Lab, once we have it out in the wild, or in Airtable, Google Sheets, Notion, whatever, then you are at the stage where you want to prioritize. Maybe you have already prioritized your ideas beforehand. Either way, you want to use something like ICE. I've talked about it before when we were talking about problem statements and strategic opportunities. You want to do the thing with impact, confidence, and ease. Again, there is more complex versions of this. For example, an article by convert.com that shows also other ways of prioritizing. I hope I have the right article here. Yeah, like PXL, for example, is one, but there's also other ways like RISE, or just many ways to do this. I would really recommend just starting out with ICE. It's super simple, doesn't require a lot of effort. In fact, you're putting effort into it by defining how much effort it will take for you to make or build an experiment. Then, very, very important, sample size calculation. Why do the sample size calculation? Sample size calculation basically helps you if you're in the if you're using frequentist statistics, and we can't go into all the statistics right now, but I'll show you some of the things later here, to understand how long does an experiment need to run in order to bring significant results. Moreover, you will understand if an experiment is significant after some time, and if you were able to create an effect big enough to be able to measure it. But there is tools like Analytics Toolkit that can help you with that. And there's also more information on statistics here. I do recommend reading this article. It's amazing. Statistical Significance in A/B Testing, a complete guide. I would really recommend reading it beginning to end, maybe on a 2-day venture, just to make sure you understand the basics and know what you're doing there, because this would be, we're already at 1 hour 13, would be just too much to cover in this video. But yeah, basically you're doing a power calculation here, understanding if you can measure the size of change. If the change is too small, maybe skip to a different kind of experiment, or different idea. There's also Booking's power calculator that I can recommend. But if you're, for example, working with continuous metrics like ARPU or AOV, you need to be able to put some different data in here. Although I'm not sure actually if this one can do it actually. I think you need to use the ones from Analytics Toolkit. This is the one that we typically use. Or for normal pretest calculation, you can use a free calculator by CXL, for example. You just put in your control, visitors, conversions. Actually, sorry, it's this one here, the pretest one. This one is for test results. This one is for pretest. And you can understand what's the minimal detectable effect. Also, I think something that's being covered in this article here. All right. I think we have to skip through some of the things because I'll share this doc later with you, so you can just go through it yourself. But regarding implementation and best practices, one thing I can really just urge you to do is make sure you have clear objectives, that you really know what you want to test for. Define one single primary metric. This is the metric you want to impact, and a set of secondary metrics, and these are the ones that will help you understand more about your visitor user behavior and gain relevant insights. Then you also have a set of guardrail metrics. Very important, right? If you're trying to optimize for conversion rate, let's say, but you really don't want to impact revenue negatively, make sure to put revenue or ARPU or whatever into your guardrail metrics. Basically, all the metrics that you do not want to impact. For example, also one thing that's very important, you don't want to impact, for example, return rates. At least at some level, you will be able to measure that if your tracking setup is set out or laid out for that. But then you want to make sure that your return rates don't skyrocket within a single experiment. Then I think we were over here, accurate implementation. Just make sure that your tests are set up correctly. I think in my newsletter I have a guide somewhere that is about how you can run AA tests, why you should do them regularly and actually more or less constantly, and just making sure that you're collecting proper data and that your tests are later valid. Then consistent monitoring. This is something that people typically overlook, but we want to make sure and have a regular check process for addressing any issues as quickly as possible, not to lose any time, and with that bandwidth. And then also I talked about this in depth or more or less in depth documentation. At least I repeated it a couple of times. Make sure you're keeping detailed records of your experiments. Now, I just mentioned here bandwidth, and I realized I skipped over something because one question that comes up regularly is, where is the money at? Where are the pesos? And this is a tool that we use. It's called a testing bandwidth calculator, where basically you can do this for each and every page. A new document, you can copy it. Feel free to do so. We will look at every page, typically on a weekly basis, put the transaction, like set the KPI. So you just look at your Google Analytics, whatever tool you use to get your data from. You can also do for over the thumb calculation. You can do it with Shopify. Then this will be automatically calculated. We will set a number of weeks that we will typically be able to test, and then also this will calculate a minimal detectable effect based on the numbers that are here. This is a template. These are not actual numbers. Typically, they should be way higher than this. Otherwise, an MDE of 9.9% will require very big changes for you to make. But just as a measure of, or just as a, for the sake of going through this here fairly quickly, you want to, you will be able to set your significant thresholds here. Maybe you should do a 95 here. Here, and then there we go. It will be very hard for you to hit that 30.2% MDE, minimal detectable effect. So that's the smallest effect you will be able to measure. So if this means if you have only on the home page and you want to measure for transactions for whatever reason, let's go for the product page here, 10%. If you have an effect smaller than 10%, you won't be able to statistically significantly be able to detect that test in any way. This will, if they're below 10%, which is a good recommendation, then you will see the ranks here. For example, if I put 5 here, which is typically shouldn't do because this is automatically calculated, but then you'll get a rank of your pages. And something we added to this calculator is that you can put your AOV in here, and you can actually see what effect on revenue per successful experiment throughout the time it is running you might be able to have. But this is typically more complex calculation. This is just an over the thumb kind of thing. Anyway, do this test bandwidth calculation. I will probably make a YouTube video on that sometime soon. If you need more insights into that. Then clear objectives, I already did that. Common pitfalls. Now, running tests for too short a duration. I already talked about this. This is why we're doing the pre-test calculation, but basically ending tests prematurely can lead to a lot of inconclusive results, or even worse, wrong data, wrong results, wrong decisions being made in the terms of false positive or false negative results for experiments, and leading to you making wrong decisions. Then, if you have an experiment where you didn't detect a winner, right, where you didn't see like, oh, this is a clear winner, what a lot of people do is they just write it off as a loser and they move on, and this is not very helpful. What you want to do is you want to start segmenting your results. Maybe you want to look at, okay, what actually happened on mobile, what happened on desktop, what happened for this and that user segment. You don't want this to draw a conclusion and make a decision. You want to do this in order to learn. You want to do this in order to inform next iterations of that experiment. Maybe you don't find anything, then you can skip, but generally, if you remember what I said about ad hoc versus strategic experimentation, is with ad hoc, people just write things off. With more strategic approach, people actually try to learn from the experiment. It's a totally different approach. I really recommend doing it. Then people often ignore external factors, right? They have one day where they had a huge sale, and people for some reason were bucketed into one variation more than the other, and then all the other days were normal, and they only let the test run for 3 days. Well, guess what? The results won't be reliable, very likely, especially if you have more or less low traffic or medium traffic website, so that can be dangerous. Same thing is with, already talked about, only letting it run for a few days. What we always recommend is letting tests run for, let's remove a multiple is probably the better word, multiple of 7 days. This means we have one business cycle. One business cycle is a week typically. So let it run for 7, 14, 21, 28 or more days, depending on your sample size calculation that you have done before anyway. This helps to smoothen out in weak seasonality and gain more reliable results, because if all your visitors do is shop on Sundays, then, well, guess what? That will impact your experiment if all you do is try to detect differences between Monday and Thursday, right? So that's why you always take full weeks and round up accordingly. And then overlooking statistical significance and reliability factors, depending on your tool and the way you analyze experiments. This will be a bit different, but typically just make sure you're following what Georgie is telling you in this guide, and only conclude experiments when they're actually significant, or stop them if they won't turn significant, or if you can't detect a proper effect. Just follow the guide. It will be very helpful. Also, by the way, I recommend this book here, Statistical Methods in Online A/B Testing. There's a lot of gems in there, and also advanced methods like I forgot the word, of course, but yeah, there's a lot of advanced methods in there that I can really recommend, and you'll be able to learn a lot about statistics, even though it is sometimes a bit dry, but this is probably one of the best resources out there. Analysis and results documentation. What I always recommend after completing a test is documenting the results comprehensively, and this is really, you won't lose much by investing. Actually, you will gain a lot by investing 20-30 minutes, maybe an hour even, in properly documenting the results. Again, the tool we're building here will do most of the documentation for you, but if you do it manually, it is well worth the time. Make sure you make sure you document the test duration, so how long the test ran, from what to what date, Also helps with later identifying maybe issues that happened throughout the runtime. Sample size, conversion rate, statistical significance, learnings, and there are actually a few more things. Generally for analysis, I can just refer to this guide and also check out the blog in general. But make sure you use Analytics Toolkit, which is a paid tool, or a free one like this, A/B test guide calculator to help with the analysis. It's pretty straightforward here. For non-binomial metrics, I do recommend, if you don't have the budget for Analytics Toolkit that helps with the entire test planning, etc., I do recommend a tool like BLAST, Statistical Significance Calculator, which is basically you change here to continuous metric and then or a non-parametric rather, and then you can upload your CSV file here and with all your order data and stuff like that. And I think there's also a guide on how to properly handle the data here. All right, that would be too much for this specific session, but then a learning framework, right? I mentioned in the beginning that all we want to do is learn. We want to learn, and through learning we win. That's why whether a test succeeded or failed, it is also important to understand why it performed the way it did. And in order to use these insights and refine our future hypothesis, we need to start creating a learning framework. You feel free to use our learning template for that. That actually helps with documenting in general. I have a whole video on here. There's a YouTube video on my YouTube channel that I can send you towards. But basically you will have your hypothesis and stuff in there. And also write down any learnings. You can also do the same in Conversion Lab. You can do the same in an Airtable, or even if you just write it down in a note somewhere that is matched to your experiment. Just important to build a learning framework and find a way to document your learnings. Now, you remember the circle we're going around, like here in this video thing? We need to define some next steps, right? If you find a winner, you obviously start implementing your variations, because this is where things are getting fun. You will see your experiments playing out. On failed tests, we want to obviously iterate and reevaluate, modify our hypotheses, just find ways to run better experiments in general, and obviously also explore new opportunities, because sometimes either through research or through the tests themselves, even though some might argue that the testing is part of the research process, you will hopefully find new opportunities, new insights that will create or identify new areas for optimization. Do that. Now, this is ideally the point at which you're saying like, wow, this is a lot of things to do. I can hardly do that on my own. And yes, you're right. I have barely seen one person, one man show or one woman show run an entire program long-term effectively. So what I recommend is in-housing this completely, building up a team and building up the skills in the company to do this, or working with an agency or an outside partner, such as what we are doing. We're helping businesses run programs like these, especially in order to build it up initially, and then also help with upskilling in the company, helping with process, helping with optimization of the optimization process. So in-house typically provides greater control and direct alignment with your business goals, but also requires dedicated resources that you have to hire typically, which is a big challenge in today's climate, I would say. And then there's agency or other like consultancies like we are that offer specialized skills, and also not to forget external perspective, because sometimes you don't see the woods with all the wood, with all the trees, however the saying goes. I think you get my approach, or you get my point. But also sometimes this is what we typically suggest, at least when you're starting out, is a hybrid approach, basically combining both in-house teams, maybe your marketing department, development department, with external agencies and consultants. This allows you to maintain core activities internally, also building this up and gaining, building up value within the company while leveraging external expertise for specialized tasks and or scaling efforts. If you want to work with us, one thing I recommend is looking at our case studies, some that we have published on our site. Click here on the link and you can read them. I think there's also a few videos on there to dig a bit deeper. You can also check out our YouTube videos or my YouTube videos on some of the things. Generally though, if you're looking to build in-house, or if you're trying to evaluate where you might need external help, typically a successful CRO team requires a diverse set of skills. Probably you know this by now. We've been talking for an hour and a half almost about how to, all the things that are required. Data analysis. You need the ability to interpret data and derive actionable insights. You need UX UI design. This is something we didn't cover in this course specifically because it's also very individual to your experiments, to your site, to your visual guidelines, etc. But you need that definitely in-house. Technical implementation. You need someone who can build the A/B tests. Project management, this I love when this is in-house, you need someone coordinating and making sure everything runs on time, but also talking with management and making sure there is enough budget, although this could be a different function in the company. And one thing that's often overlooked is copywriting. This is probably one of the most important things because copywriting typically also involves gaining a good understanding, or someone understanding and having the tools, even mental tools, just available to turn your learnings and customer insights with the proper psychological triggers into good copy that actually converts and drives conversions. And depending on how far in the process you are, you might even have a psychologist who can help you with all things psychological. Let me just put it that way. Didn't think about that title too much, but basically if you have a psychologist or a behavioral analyst or something like that, or behavioral specialist in the team, wow, that would be amazing. Typically not the case when people are starting out. There is an article by Optimizely. I think I mentioned another article by them in previously. There is more about the soft skills and stuff like that. Obviously also in regard to their platform because they want to make sure people use it well. We're, for example, also certified Optimizely experimentation strategist and platform experts, etc. But that's beside the point. If you want to build a team, you can also ask our help just to help you build it. All right, conclusion, recap of key points. Throughout this course, we have covered the essential elements of building a successful conversion rate optimization program, from understanding strategic experimentation and aligning it with your business objective. For setting up a robust analytics infrastructure, we've talked about GA4, Google Tag Manager, how to do that potentially with Shopify, and executing systematic A/B tests. You now should have a comprehensive roadmap to optimize your e-commerce store effective. At least you should know how to start. You should now understand the fundamental principles. You should have a robust analytics infrastructure to support your CRO efforts. Probably not directly after this course. You will need a bit of time to build that, but you should be on the right path to that. You should be able to develop a strategic experimentation program that is aligned with your business objectives, and you should be able to implement and analyze A/B tests effectively, at least from a top-down perspective. You will need to get into the deeds with all the details on your own, of course. Can't take that away from you. And you will be able to structure and manage a dedicated CRO team and collaborate potentially with external partners like us. So it is now your step, or it's now your time to put things into action, what you've learned. Start by assessing, if you already are doing some things, your current CRO efforts, implementing the strategies we've discussed, and continuously refining your approach based on data and insights. Please don't just test random things. You can create a strategy. We've talked about strategic opportunities. We've talked about how to use insights from qualitative and quantitative sources, research sources, and then develop proper hypothesis using the hypothesis kit version 4 that I shared with you. And remember, CRO is an ongoing process of testing, learning, and iterating to achieve sustained growth. Now, I think I have more here because there are some final thoughts and some ways you could learn more. One, I have an Experimentation Tuesday newsletter where I have currently over 600, I don't know exactly how many, but over 600 subscribers join for weekly insights. You can just go to through the link here. You can sign up. You can read some nice things people have said. You can see some of the companies where people work that are subscribed and read my emails weekly. You can also go to 3tech.de/resources, where I think this is the preview of the new resource center that we are releasing in just a few days, probably, where you will be then able to also go through the various levels, beginner, apprentice, and advanced, depending on where you are in the journey, sort by case studies, statistics, user experience, etc., more topics, and also the kind of types of resources that are available to help you in your works. Now, so look, the information in this video genuinely has the power to transform your experimentation program and drive significant growth. So I hope you went through all of this, got to the end with a bunch of notes written down on your piece of paper, and got some value from it. At this point, you technically just have two options. One, you try and implement all of this yourself, spending months figuring out all the right tools, even though I gave you quite a bunch of them, and the processes and dealing with all the technical challenges that come with building a CRO program from scratch. Or, and this is what I can potentially help you with, you can get some expert guidance from someone who's built quite a few experimentation programs for actually literally dozens, I think 30, 50 e-commerce brands, and can help avoid all the common pitfalls and mistakes that you will eventually make along the way. And if we're being honest, if you're not already running a structured testing program, you're literally leaving money on the table every single day. That's why I want you to click the first link in the video description down below and book a strategy call with me. This is for you if you want to avoid doing all of this yourself and want an experienced CRO and experimentation consultant to help you build and scale your experimentation program the right way. If that's you, click the link, book a call, and let's see if we're a good fit together. Also, make sure to save this very video so you'll find it again. Subscribe to the channel for more videos on experimentation and conversion rate optimization, e-commerce growth, and I hope to see you again soon in one of the next videos. Hope this course was helpful to you, and yeah, see you soon.